it's Becky and today I'm going to be reviewing The Caged Queen by Kristen Ciccarelli. The Caged Queen is about Roa, who has a twin sister who has died from an accident when they were a lot younger. Dax, who is the heir to the throne, is responsible for this accident, so Roa harbours a lot of resentment towards him. Roa has decided that she's going to hate Dax forever, but when a moment arises in the present day where she has to make a deal with him in order to save her people, Dax begs for her help to have an army to take over the throne from his tyrant father, and his father has also been oppressing Roa's people. Roa and Dax made the deal that if Roa led her armies into battle for the throne for Dax, that she would become his queen, as the only way she can really save her people from this oppressive rule is by becoming the queen of the country. Throughout the book, lots of twists and turns, and Roa gets the opportunity to get back her sister, but in order to do that she has to kill the heir to the throne, Dax. Throughout the whole book there's a lot of tension as to whether she should do it, whether she will do it, and how she's going to do it, and she goes along with the plan for quite a long time and then changes and chops a lot, which was really good, and there was a lot of kind of political intrigue in there as well as action and just character development. So when I went into this I thought this was going to be a sequel to The Last Namsara, which I really enjoyed. However, it was a companion novel rather than a sequel. I did find this kind of strange though, because you do kind of need to read The Last Namsara to understand some elements in this book. Because even at times I was confused because I couldn't quite remember what happened in the first book. There's just little elements, there's some characters that kind of come and go, which you probably should know who they are, otherwise it doesn't really make sense, as there's kind of a lack of development of them in the overall story. But obviously if you've read the first book you would know them, you'd know who they are and what the actions they've taken previously are. As a companion book, it actually follows Roa's point of view, which is great because in the first book she was one of the people that I wanted to see more of and understand more of where it was going. However, that was an added element of confusion because I was expecting a sequel and the first book was not Roa's point of view, so this was completely different to the first one. And it was very different elements as well, as in the first one there's a kind of quite a strong focus on kind of the dragons and the magic, whereas this one is less so and is a lot more political in nature. It's not to say that people who haven't read the first book couldn't get into it, I'm sure they could. It's a really well written book, it's kind of easy read. Whilst you may be confused at some points, you probably could just gloss over them. I think it might have been more of that I did have kind of an understanding of the first book, and that's why I was more confused when reading it than if it was a brand new eye. Ciccarelli's writing style is really easy to read, and the pace of the book is really good to kind of get you into the flow of reading, and I definitely got caught up in the storyline very, very easily. Honestly, it was a godsend because I read it whilst I was still at university and I just needed something that was kind of an easy read for me, that wasn't going to be too high fantasy that I was going to get confused if I put it down for a few days. And I didn't want anything that was making me think too much, because I just had too many things to think about. On the other side, some people might find that maybe this book isn't as in-depth as a lot of high fantasy books, but it is a YA book, so I understand why it's written that way. Similar to the first book, Ciccarelli uses world building really, really well in The Caged Queen. Myths and legends of this place were interwoven into the story and the plot line to make it really in-depth and for us to understand as a reader what's going on very, very easily. We also visit lots of different places, we meet lots of new people. Most of these people also have different cultures, which is really interesting to read. There was also additional backstory for Dax and Roa and co, which weren't explored in the first book but were something I was actually really interested to read. However, that means there's a lack of backstory for other characters that were in the first book, like Asha, who we don't really hear much about in this book at all. Give a lot of additional backstory to the characters as well, and were used well to give us the full story as to why Roa and Dax have this history. However, the flashbacks did often slow the book down. I did think that constantly going back to the past throughout the entire story meant that we were being pulled from the action in the present day. Also, Roa has kind of this tragic sister backstory, which is talked about in the blurb, so it's not a big spoiler, and those are all shown through flashbacks. And I personally didn't find it quite as interesting as Ash's storyline in the first book. We've also seen the kind of dead sister revenge plotline a lot in a lot of other books, and many times these characters are a lot stronger, more defiant, and dare I say more interesting than what Roa was in this book. I felt that a lot of the time she was just there, and a lot of things were happening to her rather than her doing things. So overall the flashbacks didn't really do much for me when reading, but I know some people really enjoy that kind of book, which has more character development, whereas I'm more of a world building and plotline overall person. Like I said before, this book doesn't really have any dragons, so if you're coming into this book expecting dragons and looking for lots of dragons, you will be very, very disappointed. There is a distinct lack of Asha throughout the book, apart from a few scenes where she is present, and even then the dragon content is not really there. I would say that the lack of Asha is a dull point for the entire book, because I was really excited to see what she did next, whereas a lot of the things she was doing were behind the scenes. They weren't told. We never really see what Asha is doing because Roa isn't interested in that part of the story, and so I really do hope that there's another book that would be the sequel. I don't know if there's going to be another book that's going to be an actual sequel to show what Asha really does or not. It felt very much like Asha was going off on adventures and we were stuck with Roa and her point of view, which was very, very political, as she was vying to get her kingdom under control and to become queen. I felt like this book could have worked better if it was the first book and then The Last Namsara was a second book, despite them being out of timeline order, just because I don't feel this book kept up with the expectations from the first one. I'm not saying it's a bad book. I did really enjoy the read, like I mentioned before. It was a really good read for the time I was in, as I needed an easy read. However, compared to the first one, it just didn't live up to what I thought it was going to be. If any of you thought the same things about this book, please let me know in the comments, as I really hope it's not just me. And thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.